When cleaning my grandfather's attic, I found a love letter he wrote to a man. They always said Grandpa Ernest came back from the war a different man. What they didn't say was that he came back with a broken heart he could never speak of. I was knee-deep in moth-eaten books and rusty ammo boxes when I found the letter. Hidden beneath a false bottom in a World War II trunk, wrapped in an old handkerchief, was a carefully folded envelope with handwriting that didn't look like his stiff, gruff penmanship. It was softer, like he wrote it while breathing someone in. I didn't mean to read it, but the envelope was already open, and the first line pulled me in like gravity. My dearest Walter, not a day passes that I don't see your face beside mine in the trench, lit by moonlight and fear. I sat down hard on the dusty wooden floor. My grandfather Ernest Donovan, the most hardened, tight-lipped man I'd ever known, had written a love letter to a man named Walter. And not just any love letter. This was a soul laid bare. Words only whispered in the dark when the world isn't listening. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell my father, who still called Ernest a man's man? Should I put the letter back where I found it and pretend I never saw it? Or should I follow it? Because at the bottom of the letter, there was a return address. Not military. A small town street in Kansas. And the last line read, "If you ever find this, maybe it's because you need to." I took a week off from my graduate program in Chicago and drove to Lawrence, Kansas. The address led me to an old bookstore tucked between a shuttered diner and a forgotten barbershop. It was called Walt's Words. The bell jingled when I stepped inside. It smelled like cedar and secrets. An old man, silver-haired, tall, elegant even in his age, looked up from the counter. His eyes narrowed. "You're a Donovan," he said, before I even opened my mouth. "You've got his eyes." I froze. "You knew him," I said, not as a question. The man gave a sad smile. "I loved him." He motioned for me to sit. And suddenly, I wasn't in a bookstore anymore. I was in the middle of a story I had never been told. One that had been buried beneath decades of silence and dust. They met in 1944, in a foxhole near Bastogne. My grandfather, a quiet, straight-arrow Texan with sharp aim and sharper cheekbones, and Walter, a wiry, sarcastic medic from Brooklyn with poetry in his blood. They weren't supposed to fall in love. But one night, under shellfire and starlight, Ernest whispered a joke, and Walter laughed in a way that made the whole war disappear for a second. That laugh became a lifeline, that love a rebellion. "Every moment we stole," Walter said, "was laced with fear, but also more alive than anything I've ever felt." After the war, they couldn't be together. Ernest's father threatened to disown him. Walter was already being watched by the FBI for subversive tendencies. So they made a pact never speak of it again. Burn the letters. Pretend. Ernest married my grandmother, had children, taught Sunday school. Walter opened a bookstore and never married. "I got one letter from him every Christmas," Walter said, handing me a tin box full of envelopes. Never signed, just typed. He never stopped writing. I stayed until the store closed. We sat in the back room surrounded by worn novels and untouched truths. When I finally asked, "Do you regret it?" Walter took a long breath. "No. We loved in a world that didn't let us. And we still did. That's not regret. That's a miracle." I didn't know how to return to my life after that. I went home to Chicago, stared at blank Word docs, pretended to care about thesis deadlines. But my mind kept drifting to a battlefield in France, to a bookstore in Kansas, to two men who loved so quietly, the world mistook them for strangers. And then I met Owen. A beta, quiet, brilliant, funny. We met in a queer history elective I was TING. He wore clashing colors and talked like every word was a question. I was an Omega who had sworn off dating after a string of confusing near relationships with people who didn't really see me. But Owen did. One night, after a guest lecture on queer soldiers in World War II, I told him about Ernest and Walter. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he held my hand. "You're not them," he said. "You get to live this out loud." I decided to publish the letters. Not as a thesis, as a book. Foxhole Hearts. The Letters of Ernest Donovan. I interviewed Walter. I digitized everything. I wrote an introduction that was more confession than academic analysis. My dad refused to read it, called it liberal nonsense. My mom cried but said she always knew there was something deeper behind Ernest's quiet. When it was published, it didn't go viral. It didn't win awards. But one night, I got an email from a 74-year-old man in Arizona who wrote, "Thank you. I kissed a man in Saigon in 1968. Thought I was the only one. Your grandfather gave me peace." I showed it to Owen. We didn't say anything. We just curled up together, and I thought this is what Ernest never got to do. Last spring, Walter passed away. He left the bookstore to me. I took a leave from school, packed up my Chicago apartment, and moved to Lawrence. Owen came with me, said it was the easiest decision he'd ever made. We reopened the store as Donovan and Waltz. Every Friday, we host Letters Never Sent nights. People come and read things they were too afraid to say out loud. We've heard everything. Love confessions, apologies, coming outs. It's beautiful. It's messy. It's loud. The way love should be. A few months ago, I found another letter in Ernest's trunk. It was addressed to me. If you're reading this, you found the part of me I buried. I only hope you get to live the life I couldn't. And if you ever find Walter, tell him I never stopped. I did more than tell him. I made sure the world knew. And in that way, two boys in a foxhole are finally getting there forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.